saying a president could sell pardons, could sell military secrets, could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival.
Federal appeals court judges appear to be skeptical of the claim that Donald Trump is protected against criminal prosecution. Trump appeared in court Tuesday as he tries to get his federal election case dismissed. Our congressional correspondent Scott McFarlane has details.
After arriving in a motorcade through the rain, Donald Trump sat in the front row as his attorney argued the 2020 election conspiracy criminal case against the former president must be dismissed.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover.
A trial judge rejected his claim of presidential immunity last year, saying a former president doesn't enjoy a get-out-of-jail-free card, which the prosecutor echoed today.
The president has a unique constitutional role, but he is not above the law.
The appeals court appeared skeptical, too, with one judge calling it paradoxical for a president to swear an oath to uphold the law.
Okay, so something absolutely wild just went down in the United States Senate, and I need everyone to understand exactly what happened, because this is the kind of moment that changes everything. Democrats just staged a dramatic walkout right in the middle of a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, and the whole thing was caught on camera for the entire world to see. They literally got up from their seats and walked out of the room in protest, while Republicans sat there trying to ram through one of Trump's most controversial nominees. This was not some quiet disagreement behind closed doors where people shake hands afterward and move on. This was a public explosion that is now going viral across social media and making headlines everywhere you look. The clips are spreading like wildfire and people cannot stop talking about what they witnessed. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Judge Florence Pan posed a pointed hypothetical to Trump's attorney.
Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first.
The judges also pressed Trump's attorney when he acknowledged the former president could be charged if he had been convicted by the Senate at his 2021 impeachment.
And here is why this matters so much right now, and why everyone needs to pay attention to what just happened. The nominee they were fighting over is Emil Bove, a former Trump attorney who Trump wants to put on a powerful federal appeals court seat in Philadelphia. But Bove is not just any nominee with a controversial background that raises some eyebrows. A whistleblower came forward and accused him of ignoring a federal judge's order to halt a deportation flight carrying 130 Venezuelan migrants. Let me say that again so it really sinks in and you understand the gravity of what we are talking about here. The guy Trump wants to put on a federal appeals court allegedly defied a federal judge's order, and Republicans are trying to force him through anyway without any real debate or consideration of what that means for the rule of law in this country. Senator Cory Booker absolutely went off during this hearing and called it a day of shame for the committee in front of everyone watching. He accused Republicans of bowing to Donald Trump's will and doing whatever Trump tells them to do, regardless of what is right or what the rules say or what the Constitution requires. He said they were cutting off debate and forcing votes through without giving anyone a chance to actually examine this nominee's record and ask the hard questions that need to be asked. And then every single Democrat on the committee got up and walked out in protest because they refused to be part of what they called a complete mockery of the confirmation process. The whole thing was captured on video, and the clips are spreading everywhere across every platform. And look, I know some people are going to say this is just political theater and Democrats are being dramatic and making a scene for the cameras, but let me explain why this is actually a much bigger deal than just one walkout over one nominee that will be forgotten in a week. This is part of a pattern that has been building for months. This is part of a much larger story about how Trump is trying to reshape the courts and the entire federal government by ramming through loyalists who will do whatever he wants regardless of their qualifications or their ethics. And it is not just about Bove in this one nomination. It is about everything Trump has been doing since the start of his second term to consolidate power. Think about what we have seen over the past several months since Trump took office again. Trump has been demanding that Republicans kill the filibuster so he can get whatever he wants through the Senate without any opposition or compromise. He triggered the longest government shutdown in American history because he refused to budge on his demands or negotiate in good faith. He has been picking fights with his own party members who dare to question any of his decisions or suggest a different approach. And now he is trying to put a guy on a federal appeals court who allegedly ignored a judge's order, and Republicans are going along with it because they are afraid to stand up to him and face his wrath. This is what Trump's Washington looks like right now, and everyone needs to see it clearly. Shouting matches in committee hearings, walkouts that make national news, procedural crackdowns that bypass normal debate, rules being bent or broken to get Trump's way on everything he wants. And the question everyone should be asking is, how long can this go on before something really breaks? How long can you run a government on pure power plays and chaos before the whole thing falls apart and stops functioning entirely? Because here is the thing that should worry everyone watching this unfold, regardless of which party you support. When you have one party staging walkouts and the other party ramming through nominees, regardless of credible accusations against them, that is not normal governance. That is not how a functioning democracy is supposed to work. That is a sign that the basic norms and rules that keep our system together are falling apart in real time right before our eyes. All right, so let us get into what actually happened and why this walkout is such a significant moment in the larger story of Trump's second term and his approach to governing. On July 17th, 2025, the Senate Judiciary Committee was holding a hearing on Emil Bove's nomination to a seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia. This is one of the most powerful courts in the country, and it sits just below the Supreme Court itself in the federal judiciary hierarchy. Whoever sits on this court makes decisions that affect millions of people across multiple states for decades to come. So the stakes were already incredibly high before anyone even opened their mouths or asked a single question about this nominee's qualifications and background. Now, here's what you need to know about Emil Bove and why Democrats were so fired up about this nomination in the first place and why they felt a walkout was necessary. Bove is a former Trump attorney who worked directly for Trump on legal matters during some very important cases. And that alone would be enough to raise questions about whether he can be an impartial judge who follows the law rather than doing what Trump wants him to do. But it gets so much worse than just his connection to Trump and his work as Trump's lawyer. A whistleblower came forward with accusations that Bove ignored a federal judge's order to halt a deportation flight. We are talking about 130 Venezuelan migrants who were being deported from this country. A federal judge said stop the flight because there are legal issues that need to be resolved first. And according to the whistleblower, Bove ignored that order and let the deportation happen anyway, as if the judge's ruling did not matter at all. Think about what that means for a second and really let it sink in, because this is absolutely extraordinary. This is a guy who allegedly defied a court order from a sitting federal judge, and Trump wants to put him on a federal appeals court where he will be interpreting and enforcing the law for millions of Americans. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Trump keeps talking about law and order in every speech and every interview. He keeps saying he is the only one who respects the rule of law and the Constitution, and then he nominates someone accused of ignoring a judge's direct order and demands Republicans confirm him anyway. You cannot make this stuff up. It is beyond parody at this point. So Democrats came into this hearing ready to fight, and they were not going to let this nomination sail through without serious scrutiny. They wanted to ask questions about these allegations. They wanted to examine the whistleblower's claims. They wanted to do what the confirmation process is supposed to be about, actually vetting nominees to make sure they are qualified and fit to serve on one of the most powerful courts in the country. But Republicans had other plans entirely. They wanted to cut off debate and force the vote through as quickly as possible without any real examination. They did not want to give Democrats time to ask tough questions or put Bove's record under scrutiny. They just wanted to ram it through and move on to the next item on Trump's wish list. And that is when everything exploded in that committee room for the whole country to see. Senator Cory Booker took the floor and delivered what can only be described as a verbal beatdown of his Republican colleagues that will be remembered for a long time. He called it a day of shame for the committee. He said Republicans were bowing to Donald Trump's will instead of doing their constitutional duty to provide advice and consent on judicial nominees. He accused them of abandoning Senate traditions and norms just to please one man who demands absolute loyalty. And when it became clear that Republicans were going to force the vote, no matter what anyone said, every Democrat on the committee got up and walked out in protest. The walkout itself was dramatic enough to make news everywhere across the country and around the world. Video clips started spreading on social media immediately, and within hours, millions of people had seen what happened. News outlets from PBS to CNN to local affiliates across the country covered it as a major story that showed something fundamental breaking in how Washington works. And the reason it got so much attention is because it perfectly captured what has been happening in Washington under Trump's second term. The normal process does not matter anymore. Debate does not matter. Qualifications do not matter. Allegations of wrongdoing do not matter. All that matters is whether Trump wants something, and if he does, Republicans will find a way to make it happen, regardless of the consequences. But here is where this connects to an even bigger story that everyone needs to understand to see the full picture. And during that shutdown fight, the same dynamics we saw in this walkout were on full display for everyone to see. Trump pushing hard and refusing to give an inch. Republicans falling in line because they are afraid of what happens if they do not. Democrats trying to resist and being steamrolled anyway. And the basic norms that are supposed to keep government functioning getting trampled in the process. The filibuster has been around for over a century. It exists to protect minority rights in the Senate and ensure that major decisions require some level of consensus rather than simple majority rule. But Trump wanted it gone because it was standing in his way, and he pressured Republicans to destroy it just so he could win one fight. Now connect that to what happened with both, and you can see the pattern clearly. Trump wants loyalists on the courts who will rule in his favor no matter what. And the walkout shows that Democrats have decided they are not going to just sit there and pretend everything is normal anymore while the system gets dismantled. They are not going to participate in what they see as a sham process designed to rubber stamp Trump's picks without any real examination. Okay, so let us break this down into what it actually means, because there are several important threads here that we need to pull apart and examine carefully. Let me walk through the key points one by one so everyone can see the full picture of what is happening and why it matters so much for the future of this country. Point number one, this walkout is really about the courts and why Trump is so focused on putting loyalists in judicial positions across the entire federal judiciary. The federal courts are incredibly powerful institutions. They decide cases that affect everything from immigration to business regulations to civil rights to criminal justice to voting rights to environmental protection. And judges serve for life once they are confirmed. That means once someone is confirmed to a federal appeals court, they are there for decades making decisions that shape the country long after Trump leaves office. That is why Trump is so obsessed with filling these seats with people he trusts to do what he wants. And that is exactly what makes the Bove nomination so troubling and why Democrats felt they had to make a dramatic statement about it. This is not just about one judge on one court who might rule the wrong way sometimes. This is about Trump's strategy to reshape the entire judiciary with people who will be loyal to him rather than loyal to the law and the Constitution. If Bove really did ignore a federal judge's order and then gets rewarded with a federal judgeship for his loyalty, what message does that send to everyone else? It says that following the law does not matter as long as you are on Trump's team and you do what he wants. It says that defying court orders is fine as long as Trump approves of your actions. That is incredibly dangerous for the rule of law, and everyone should be concerned about it regardless of their political views. Point number two, the walkout exposes the complete hypocrisy of Trump's law and order rhetoric that he uses constantly. Trump talks about law and order in every speech he gives, in every interview he does. He says he is the only one who respects the Constitution and takes it seriously. And this connects to Trump's broader immigration crackdown that has been one of the defining features of his second term and what his base loves most about him. The deportation flight that Bove allegedly refused to stop was part of Trump's hardline approach to immigration that he campaigned on. He wants mass deportations of people he considers undesirable. He wants tough enforcement that sends a message. He wants to show his base that he is being aggressive on the border and following through on his promises. But when a judge says, wait, you cannot do this because there are legal problems, Trump's people allegedly ignored it and did it anyway. That is not law and order. That is lawlessness dressed up in tough talk and patriotic language. Point number three, the pressure on Republicans is real, and it is getting harder for them to manage as these confrontations keep escalating. Most Republican senators know that what Trump is doing is problematic and creates serious risks for the party and the country. They know that ramming through controversial nominees without proper vetting is bad for the institution they serve in. They know that threatening to kill the filibuster over every fight is dangerous and sets terrible precedents. But they are afraid to say anything publicly because they have seen what happens to Republicans who cross Trump. They get attacked on social media relentlessly. They get primary challengers funded by Trump allies. They get labeled as traitors and enemies of the movement. So they go along with it, even when they have private doubts and concerns about where this is all heading. They cut off debate, even when they know it looks bad and undermines the Senate's reputation. They force votes, even when they know the nominee has serious problems that deserve examination. And the result is that Trump gets whatever he wants, while Republicans take the political hit for enabling him. Some Republicans are quietly worried that Trump is overplaying his hand and that voters will eventually punish them for being seen as Trump's servants rather than independent legislators who think for themselves. But so far, none of them are willing to break ranks publicly because the personal cost is too high. Point number 4. The dysfunction is becoming the story itself, and that has political consequences that could matter in future elections. When you have walkouts and shouting matches and procedural warfare dominating the news cycle that shapes how people see Washington and what they think about the people running it, it feeds a narrative that government is broken and nothing works anymore. Some people will blame Democrats for being obstructionist and dramatic, but many people will blame Trump for creating the chaos in the first place with his scorched earth approach to everything. The walkout gives Democrats a visual moment they can point to and say, look at what Trump has done to the Senate. Look at how he has destroyed normal governance and made everything a fight. And that matters heading into the 2026 midterm elections, when voters are going to be making decisions about whether they want more of this or whether they want something different. If the story of Trump's second term is constant chaos and dysfunction and confrontation, that could hurt Republicans, even in districts where Trump himself is popular. People might like Trump personally and support his policies, but still want their government to actually function and get things done. The walkout and everything around it feeds the argument that Trump's approach to governing is fundamentally broken and cannot produce real results. Point number 5, what comes next is going to be even more intense than what we have already seen, and everyone should brace themselves. The fights over judicial nominees are not going to stop because Trump wants to reshape the courts, and he is not giving up on that goal. The pressure to kill the filibuster is not going away because Trump hates anything that limits his power. The clashes between Trump and anyone who resists him are going to keep escalating because that is how he operates. And at some point, the pressure is going to produce even bigger confrontations than a walkout that makes the news for a few days. Think about what happens when the next government shutdown fight comes around and Trump makes the same demands again. Think about what happens when Trump demands something even more extreme and Republicans have to decide whether to go along with it or finally draw a line. Think about what happens when the courts start ruling against Trump on some of these nominees and executive actions and he decides he does not have to comply. Every one of those moments is going to be a potential breaking point where the dysfunction gets even worse and the system gets tested even further. And here is the thing that should concern everyone, regardless of which side you are on politically. This is not sustainable as a way to govern a country. You cannot run a government on chaos and confrontation forever. Eventually, something breaks that cannot be fixed easily. Eventually, the institutions give way under the pressure. Eventually, the norms that hold everything together stop mattering entirely. We are not there yet, but we are closer than we have ever been in modern American history. The walkout over Bove is a symptom of a much deeper problem that will not go away when this nominee gets confirmed. Trump wants total control over everything. He wants to bend every institution to his will. He wants anyone who opposes him to be silenced or marginalized or destroyed. And when he meets resistance, he pushes harder rather than finding compromise. That approach might work in the short term to get nominees confirmed and bills passed, but it leaves wreckage behind. It destroys trust between the parties. It makes future cooperation impossible. So where does this end? That is the question nobody can answer right now. Does Trump eventually overreach so badly that even Republicans turn on him? Do voters get tired of the chaos and demand something different? Or does Trump succeed in remaking Washington entirely in his image? The cracks are showing, the walkouts are happening, the dysfunction is spreading, and everyone can see it unfolding in real time. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. There is going to be a lot more drama and a lot more chaos before we see where all of this leads. And trust me, whatever happens next, you are definitely going to want to know about it. I will see you in the next one.